Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's good to be back on stage after 3 years. So today's session is basically focused more on how do we streamline migrations for any typical FSI customer, right? So just a quick introduction. I'm Yash Acharya, a specialist solutions architect for focusing on migrations and modernization in ASEAN. We'll be, in this session today, we would be going through the do's and don'ts of the migrations and modernization as you go through the entire process. Also with me today during the session, I have Rahul Khasnis. He's the head of managed platforms in Synpulse. He would be walking us through what his experience has been migrating and modernizing a wealth management platform for a bank in the region. So the overall agenda today, right? We'll kickstart the session with the pillars of successful migration. There are typically 4 pillars which we'll be walking through today. Then in the region, while working with different customers in the FSI space, what has worked, what has not worked, and how the journey should look like for an FSI customer. I'll walk you through that. Then what are the different technical building blocks for a typical FSI? So we'll go through different architecture components involved in a typical FSI and understand how it all ties together. Next, we would also go through all the tools and services which are available on the AWS side, which can help you accelerate your migration and modernization journey. Later on, we'll also go through the case study and close it off with some best practices. Now, looking at the pillars of a successful migration, typically 4 pillars which any FSI would have to concentrate while they go through an overall transformation journey. First, let's focus on business. Now, whenever you're planning your migration journey, like an FSI is planning out a migration journey, they should be aligning the entire program to the business strategy. Now, typically, whenever you're thinking of transformation, you would look at points such as growth, innovation, and competitiveness, right? So these things, these 3 components should be well aligned with what you are trying to achieve and should not conflict with your existing processes and growth models. Next pillar is people. Now, migration is a big change, right? So people within the organization, within overall environment, should be trained, should be upskilled to make sure that they're able to adopt to new technologies, right? Leveraging the transformation journey within the FSI, you can also make sure that people cross-collaborate together well, and that would basically help you in increasing your decision-making processes, as well as making sure that the migrations happen within the defined budgets. The next main pillar over here is technology. And this is a very crucial element when we talk about migrations and modernization as a whole. So for any successful migration, having a strong foundation on the technical side is very important. You need to make sure that all the application assessments, the infrastructure level assessments, even the database level assessments are done properly. You're able to define your architecture in such a way that you can leverage all the cloud-native technologies. If you build out a strong foundation on the tech side, your journey would be much more smoother. Lastly, I would like to talk about risk and compliance. As we all know, FSIs are heavily regulated, right? And for that particular reason, this pillar becomes very, very important. Security teams and risk teams within the FSI should be involved in the transformation journey from the word get-go. This would help you in capturing all the possible risks and problems that the team might face post the migration, right? So if you start preparing in the initial phases quickly, you would be able to remove all the roadblocks easily. Now, I would like to take a step back and maybe focus more on the journey, right? What would basically help any FSI customer reach their goals? So, as AWS, we've been working with FSI customers across the globe for the last 10 years, and we've built out some practices which would really help you accelerate your migration journey. So just to make it easier, if you look at the screen, I've divided it into 3 phases. This makes it easier for the stakeholders internally to understand as well that the phase-wise approach would be easier, would be much more systematic rather than just going in a big bang way. So the first phase is basically focusing on embarking on the journey. That means, what are my baby steps that I need to take to make sure that my migration and modernization is successful? So in the first step in the embark journey, you're basically focusing on what matters to you as an organization. What are your business goals? What are your technical goals? How do you align these together to leverage cloud? What are the benefits that you're getting out of leveraging cloud? The next step would be, once you've decided that, yeah, cloud would make sense for our organization, it's helping us achieve our business goals, our technical goals, you would then start working on your foundations. This is where you start iterating on your existing IT operating models, your workflows and processes to evolve all the services being offered to your end customers. So just a pointer to note over here, we're not saying start from scratch, build on what you have currently. This would then lead us to one more aspect, right? Which is around having some quick wins in place. Now, typically, when you're going through a migration or planning out a migration journey, there are situations where teams would be like, why are we doing this, right? There's no motivation. They don't see the value coming in from a cloud migration. So having some quick wins decided in the initial phase would be very helpful in terms of getting the overall teams motivated. So just an example, customers in this region, specifically in ASEAN, who've been successful and have been accelerating their overall migration journey, they've taken up applications which are in the middle tier of high critical to medium critical. The applications would have less dependencies, but it is adding business value, right? So those applications can be taken up as part of quick wins. So there have been applications by customers in the region who have taken up eKYC or even their ECM BPM applications, which help them carry out the migration quickly. And they've also taken up certain aspects of the app and modernized that on AWS. This has helped them create those motivation levers within the team and has helped them accelerate the entire modernization journey. So in the second phase, while you've created the view for all the stakeholders, you've created a lot of momentum within the team to carry out the migration. You then start off with the mass migration piece, wherein you establish a migration factory. You leverage functions like CCOE, which could basically further improve the overall migration journey for the customer. And lastly, focus on continuous refinement. Now, this is where you bring in certain frameworks around value management, cost optimization, and culture of innovation. It's not restricted to these pillars, but you could bring in these few items into the refinement pillar to scale out the overall cloud adoption. So the slide might look a bit overwhelming, but be rest assured that AWS, having the experience working with global customers, could help you out in this journey in a very smooth and an effective way. We have programs, we have the services, we have competent partners who can come in and help you accelerate your journey to the cloud. Now, we've spoken about the overall journey, how it looks like. Let's just double tap into the technical landscape, right? While you're talking about the building blocks, there are different architecture patterns that we'll be looking at to make sure that these all architectures are combined, the teams are combined together, and you create a view for your migration. So the first one is business architecture. Now this is important because every FSI customer would have their business operations and processes in place. So you would have your own architecture defined on this front, right? So if the business architecture is mapped back to your cloud processes, you would be in a better state. The second one is application architecture. Now, from the start itself, you should be focusing on what if the application is actually suited for the cloud. What are the different changes that you may require in order to make sure that the application is hosted well and it could basically take native services into play, right? Just like containers or serverless. The next one is data architecture. Now, typically wherever you would see, or if you're hosted on-prem or on the other clouds, there are chances that your data landscape or your databases are not optimized, right? Keeping a close eye on your databases is very important. So leveraging tools, inbuilt services on AWS, as well as different scripts, you can actually make sure that you're using the right licensing model, the right edition of your databases, and the right platform once you move to the cloud. Next one is the infrastructure architecture. So infrastructure architecture is also very important. This should map back to your current processes. Obviously, you would be evolving them, but aspects around backup, your overall retrieval strategies, everything needs to be backed to the infrastructure architecture. The next one is around security. FSIs, we know, heavily regulated, so we need to have top-notch security, both on-prem as well as on the AWS side. So you should be working on the aspects wherein how do you introduce new features, new feature sets once you carry out a migration. This could be anything related to identity access management or even privilege access management. Lastly, integration architecture. This is very important because you would have systems which are newly deployed on the cloud, or you would have systems which are basically running on-prem. You would need to integrate these, right? So evolving them to make sure that the newer systems integrate with the older systems is very important. So combining these all architecture patterns are very important. They are interdependent and should be used as a base for the overall migration planning. Now I've spoken about the different architecture patterns and different aspects around migration. Now how do we accelerate these? So we have different tools and services available on the AWS side which can help you accelerate your migration and modernization. So the services are divided into offline, online. This is specifically around the data migration. So if you consider offline, we have the Snow family. These are basically devices which you can use to send across the data from your on-prem side to the AWS side. Online, we have Storage Gateway, which is used for syncing SMB, iSCSI protocols from on-prem to the AWS side. Then we have AWS transfer for SFTP. Classic example, banks in the region are using this managed service to carry out exchanges with different banks as well, instead of leveraging your native SFTP servers on-prem, right? So this could be a direct replacement. Then we have data sync and Finesse's Firehose, which basically allows you to capture streaming data as well as syncing EFS file systems to the cloud. From a network optimization perspective, we have Direct Connect and S3 transfer acceleration. So Direct Connect is a dedicated pipe that we have, which would help you connect from on-prem to the AWS side. And S3 transfer acceleration makes internet transfers to S3 quick and easy. Then in terms of overall migrations and modernization, there are two components on the VM side as well as the database side. So virtual machine side, we have the application migration service, which can help you accelerate the overall migrations of your virtual machines. This is basically rehosting. No changes are required. You simply just lift and shift to the cloud. Database migration service, this is typically used for any homogeneous or heterogeneous migrations. From MySQL to MySQL, or even if you want to shift away from Oracle and move to Postgre. There are a few other services which are available from a modernization acceleration perspective. So if you would like to quickly move away from your legacy workloads, move it to a container, you can simply use an app to container, right? This is a very simple approach to take up the application as a package and move it into a container workload. Second one is .NET Porting Assistant, which is basically used to move away from .NET Framework to .NET Core. AWS Mainframe Modernization was introduced just last year. This helps you compile, convert, create runtime, and improve the overall functionality of your mainframe workloads. And the last but not the least is the AWS Migration Hub Refactor Spaces. This is a new service and has been quite a few customers in ASEAN have started leveraging this, and it's basically used for incremental application refactoring. So now I would like to hand it over to Rahul to take us through the case study on how Synpulse helped a customer in the region with their migration to the cloud.
Thank you, Yash. Good afternoon and hello, everyone. My name is Rahul. Hope you had your dose of caffeine to take you through the rest of the session in the afternoon. Good to see a good crowd. What I will do is quickly take you through who Synpulse is and what we do. Synpulse is a global organization. We're made up of 1,300 plus people over the world, 23 odd countries, headquartered in Zurich, presence in Singapore as well. Our delivery centers are in Manila, India, in Pune, and in Bratislava in Slovakia. What we do, we are basically focused more on BFSI clients. We've been trusted partner for these customers for 25 plus years and recognized in the industry. We've got three main pillars: management consulting that looks at target operating models, business strategies, assessing clients' needs in terms of their platforms on the management consulting side. Synpulse 8, which is the product team. We're developing our own products, helping clients with their architecture designs, application modernizations, and software evaluations. And then managed platforms, which I head, which is basically cloud implementation, cloud migration, hosting, and managed services of the cloud. That's just a quick round of Synpulse. I'm going to take you through challenges that drive moving to cloud. We've got a latest advisor in the world today, which will give you all the different reasons why people want to move to cloud. That advisor is called ChatGPT. And if you ask that person why, they'll give you 110 reasons. I'm not going to cover all of them. The whole idea is to give my view of when we spoke to our customers, what they felt were their driving needs. First one is rapidly evolving technology. I think pre-COVID and post-COVID has changed our worlds a lot. I think most of you who are in the finance industry would have realized how many of you were allowed to work from home before COVID and how many of you are now working from home in the banking industry, working with banking data at home. So there's a huge mind shift of how we are doing things. Your ability to do operations on your phone or your mobile, trading has gone up through the sky. All this has happened in the last 2 years. That meant that new technologies were coming in, the landscape of technology was evolving, and we all had to keep up with all that technology. Legacy systems not built for that kind of pace. It took time. Just getting a router could take you 3 months nowadays with chip shortages and a lot of other things that are happening in the market. That is one of the areas. The other one is scalability. Obviously, with a lot of people accessing digital technology, the ability for platforms to be able to scale up and down has drastically improved or needed. Post this era, the spike used to happen when we all got our salaries. That's when monthly end, boom, everything went up. Today, everything can go up like tomorrow. Some event happens, Fed comes and speaks something on the net. We all are trying to balance our portfolios, right? So this scalability is not a fixed event anymore. It can happen at any time. So understanding how you want to build for that scalability, try doing that with your legacy systems, and best of luck in that. That's one of the areas where customers are having issues. Time to market. With consumers moving ahead, even regulators want to move ahead. And classic examples are what's happening in Singapore, Taiwan, and other regions where regulators are nudging banks and nudging institutions to adopt more digital technologies, digital banking, and you'll hear some other topics being mentioned. That's also driving new services that you and me want from the banks. And we want it digital. We don't want to go to a brick and mortar shop and stand in the queue. We want it on our phones. As we are talking with our friends, we want to do this. So time to market has become a very critical area that we need to change. Operational efficiencies. Obviously with legacy systems, a lot of the operations are manual, very process oriented, not automated that much. That drives a lot of inefficiencies in the system, right? So that's been an area that people want to improve on. People and skills. Biggest challenge that we are having. New technologies means new areas of learning. Old technologies means those skills are fading out, but yet you need them. You still need people to work on mainframes. You still need COBOL skills. How are you going to get them? I'm sure we were just talking how many people with COBOL skills are there. Very few. So you need to update those skills. You need to get new people who have those skills. That's getting difficult. And finally, cost. Cost not the only driver, but that's one of the drivers. Getting these kind of skill sets, getting this legacy systems to be continuously updated, keeping up with all the requirements of consumers does cost. And how do you manage that? Now, what happened with the customer that we're talking about? It's a wealth management bank in the region, focused mainly, it's a global bank, but what we were doing was in Singapore and Hong Kong for them. Similar issues and challenges they had. They wanted, capacity was growing, the client base of wealth in this part of the world was growing. They wanted to build more capacity. They looked around, they didn't have capacity. Unfortunately, the data center also didn't have capacity. So they had to look either to expand the data center, move somewhere else, or find an alternative. And cloud was one of the alternatives. It's not always the best case, but that was one of the alternatives. The wealth management platform, TCO, was something that they were struggling with. They were trying to understand, what if we bring on our own cloud platform? Would that help? That was one of the reasons. And modernization of tech stack. Bringing on cloud native, using cloud native applications rather than on-prem applications also helped them improve their tech stack to provide more services to their clients. What did they do? And Yash mentioned some of the strategies. It's not always necessary to hit one strategy, and it's not always necessary to hit the best strategy. You need to go with what works best. Going to cloud is a lot about psychological, I would say, convincing people psychologically more than technically to move to cloud, because a lot of emotions come up and psychological issues come up in terms of convincing to cloud. So sometimes showing the low-hanging fruit and gaining evidence that cloud helps makes a lot of difference, and that's where replatforming comes in. Take what you have, move it to cloud, understand what benefits it gives you. It adds more sponsors and more people who are willing to do that. Obviously, it reduces migration risk because you're not changing too much. You're just taking as is and putting it on cloud. You're re-hosting it on cloud. Of course, time to market also improves. What it does, other thing is maintains your availability. With cloud, you have multiple AZs, multiple regions, so your reliability, availability backup DR sort of scenarios don't have an implication as much as it would have had if you wouldn't want to move it to a new data center and set everything up. And finally, replatforming. So we use two strategies, hosting, move as is, and replatforming. Replatforming was used where we looked at microservices applications that were there instead of having, I'm just going to name, it's not necessarily it's bad, OpenShift. They had OpenShift, which for them was expensive. Taking out OpenShift, moving it on EKS, reduced that cost as well. So that helped. Sorry, Red Hat, if anybody's here. But that's not the intention. But something like this, right? I mean, you've got to look at it. So that was one of the reasons. So just a quick overview of what the architecture looked like and where we applied replatforming and where we looked at refactoring, right? So that's the area that had just core applications. We just took out from the standard servers, Linux-based, into EC2 instances. And the workload, which was microservices-based, that is what we moved into replatforming in terms of bringing it on EKS. What are the things I would say you look out for when you do this is around network architecture. A lot of times you move within your own infrastructure, you're not looking at network so much because it's pretty much set, it's all there. When you're moving out of your existing architecture into cloud, network becomes an area you do need to look at security of network. You do need to understand whether it should be direct, VPN, what sort of security you need to apply, what encryption policies that you need to consider, especially in the finance industry. Network architecture is one of them. The second one is data migration approaches, which also Yash covered. Multiple ways you can do it. You can do the whole migration one at a time. You can break it into pieces, do it incrementally. You can do it hybrid. End of the day, you need to figure out what serves you best, what's the best thing for you to go to market, because unless you move your data, your application move is useless. Your application can move, but if data isn't there, nothing works. That is what you really need to take into account. My experience in past, not to promote AWS or anything, but we did use their data migration services to move from Oracle to Postgres, again as an example. But that helped because it accelerated the data migration for us. That's an approach you need to look at. Capacity management. You do need to look at capacity management. Taking the whole box and moving into cloud is just going to add more cost to you. You really need to look at capacities. You really need to understand what works for you and then move it to cloud, understand what scalability is, how are you going to scale up in the event you have a spike in requirements. And finally, FinOps. FinOps is a new term, but I think operational efficiency and organization around financials is absolutely key. And all those of you who worked on cloud, you will imagine that spinning off on new EC2 instances or data requirements can exponentially increase your cost. So keeping an eye on that, how much it is going up, where is it going up, putting in budget constraints around use of cloud infrastructure is absolutely important when you do migrate to cloud. That's about it. I will now hand it back to Yash. There he is to close out. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate your attention.
So much, Rahul, for the insights. So just to close off the session, basically, I would like to present some key takeaways for you, right? So for an FSI, typically the 8 pillars where you can focus on in terms of having the best practices for your migration and modernization. So make sure you have all the key stakeholders involved from the start. You have a proper, clear communication plan in place. Embrace as much automation as possible to make your migration smoother and easier. And from the start, get all the compliance, security, risk teams involved to create a view for the entire organization. So that's it from my side and from Rahul's side. We're so thankful for you to join this session. If you have any questions, I'll be at the migration and modernization booth. You can find me there and we can have a deeper level discussion over there as well. Thank you so much and have a great day.